Flight attendant life can be very difficult and stressful. However, when it comes to our income or our earning potential as a whole, it gets even more complicated. In today's video, I will be addressing somehow a controversial topic related to being a flight attendant. That is the truth behind flight attendant pay. Disclaimer, I know everybody has their own opinion when it comes to flight attendant pay. The opinions shared in this video are strictly mine, and I am not here to speak on anybody's truth, but some of the things that have become apparent to me. So they are my opinions, so don't take it personal in the comment section. You can share your opinion, but we're not at war here. So disclaimer once again, these are my opinion. These are some of the factors that I think are worth talking about when it comes to flight attendant pay. So calm down, take a breather, and let's get into these factors real quick. I'm gonna start off by delving into what flight attendant actual pay is, or what constitutes our actual pay from the basic perspective. Okay, we're not going into the trenches here. Bear with me, follow me. First thing is that our pay is made up of three components, right? There are many, but I'm gonna focus on the three major ones. The first one is your flight time pay. Our hourly or base pay is earned based on our flight time. That is the actual flying time, which starts once the boarding door closes and we push back from the gate. So essentially, total flight time pay equals your hourly or base pay times the trip credit value. The value of our trips are put into credits. And that times the hourly pay that you have, which potentially might be between 20 to 30 something dollars, depending on which airline that you're with, as a new flight attendant, is your hourly pay. So it's gonna be the trip credit times your hourly pay. That would give you your total flight time pay. Remember, I'm talking about three major components of our pay: flight time pay, layover pay, and boarding pay. So for example, for first year hire or a new hire flight attendant earning $35.50, if the trip credit for a typical 3-day trip for you is 17 hours, then your total flight time pay would be the $35.50 times the 17 hours, which is the value of your trip, which equals $603.50. That's the first part of your pay for that 3-day trip. Secondly is your layover or per diem, the pay you receive during your layover or the time you spend away from your base in total, which is the time you sign in to the time you're released from that trip. It's not the same as your hourly pay, okay? So when we say that we're on this layover and we're getting paid while enjoying life and living our best life, that pay we're talking about is not the same as our hourly pay. It's a set premium amount, which is essentially a stipend. So for example, if your set premium amount for your layover pay is, let's say, $2.85 or $2.50, in this case, I'm gonna use $2.85, depending on the airline, then for the 3-day trip that I talked about initially, that was worth 17-hour credit. If the time away from base or the time you spend away from your base, from the time you sign in to when you're released from the trip is, let's say, 50 hours, then the total layover pay you're going to earn from that 3-day trip or that 17-hour credit 3-day trip will be the $2.85 times the 50 hours, which equals $142.50. So essentially, with this 3-day trip, your flight time pay is $603.50, and your layover pay will then be $142.50. Thirdly, we have the boarding pay. This is not paid by all airlines currently. However, my airline pays boarding pay. Another fact about flight attendant actual pay is that the boarding pay is also a set premium, which means it is different from your hourly pay. So when we're boarding, some airlines don't even pay at all. That is also a set premium, and it varies from airline to airline. And you earn the boarding pay based on every flight that you work. So on this, with regards to the 3-day trip example that I gave, if let's say over the 3-day period, the first day I work 2 flights, the second day I work 2 flights, the third day I work 2 flights, then my boarding pay would be whatever the set premium is. Let's say it's $10, right? It will be $10 times 6 because I worked or I boarded 6 flights. If for whatever reason you have to reboard the flight, deplane and then reboard again, you get paid for each time you have to do it. So whenever you board a flight, the boarding pay is a set premium amount. And depending on how many flights you work, that would give you the total amount that we're talking about when it comes to your boarding pay. In today's video though, I will not be talking about the total earnings in depth because I do have another video that will be part of this series coming up. However, I just wanted to give the total breakdown or the actual breakdown of some of the realities of what makes up our pay. It's not like just because I'm making $40 an hour or whatever means that if I show up to work and I'm away from my home for like 50 hours, then I'm getting paid for that 3 days, 50 times my hourly pay. No, they are broken down into what I said, which was the flight time pay, boarding pay, and layover pay. It's not that simple, okay? Let's move on to why flight attendants ask for higher pay or why we should be paid a higher hourly pay. The first thing that I'd like to talk about is the fact that we do not get paid our hourly or base pay when we clock in to when we clock out. Yes, that's another fact. You know how you work a typical 9 to 5 and then you clock in at 9 o'clock and your pay starts, and then once you clock out at 5 p.m. it ends? No, it doesn't work that way, y'all. It does not work that way. Hence, our hourly pay needs to be high to fill in the gaps. In the example that I mentioned earlier for that 3-day trip that was worth 17 credit hours, and the flight attendant being away from home or from sign in to sign out being up to 50 hours, which is their time away from base. The base is where your trip starts, essentially. However, their actual earning based on their hourly pay, it's gonna be calculated based on the 17 hours and not the 50 hours. So just because you signed in and signed out, and it took you 50 hours over that 3-day period, does not necessarily mean that your hourly pay of $35.50 will be calculated against the 50 hours. No, it will be calculated against the flight time pay, which I explained earlier. So you're physically away from home for 50 hours, yet your actual earning flight time pay based on the hourly pay that is advertised as your hourly pay is going to be based on the trip credit value. The second thing is that the time that we spend away from friends and family in general, to a large extent, is not comparable to a regular job. In the example that I said of the 17-hour credit 3-day trip, being away from home or from your base for 50 hours, somebody who works a typical 9 to 5 job, even if it takes them 30 minutes to get to work and 30 minutes to get back, that's 8 hours plus an hour. So that's about 9 hours spent away from home daily over a 3-day period. However, if you start a 3-day trip as a flight attendant, the reality is that you will be away from home for about 50 hours from the time, not even including your drive time to the airport and from the airport. So let's say it takes you an hour, just like the person working the 9 to 5. So essentially it's gonna take you 51 hours being away from your household, being away from your friends and family. But yet your flight time pay of the $35.50 for your hourly new hire pay, it's going to be calculated against the trip credit value, which is the actual flight time pay. Once again, fine, you're getting that layover pay, but as you saw in the example that I stated, the layover premium pay is very minimal. It's like pocket money, spending money while you're in your layover. So it's not the same as your hourly pay. So when you hear somebody say, I get paid $35 an hour as a flight attendant, the reality is that if that flight attendant works the 3-day trip that I'm talking about, their actual pay based on that 35 is going to be calculated against the 17-hour flight time pay or the trip credit value and not the time they actually spent away from family and friends. So then you spend so much time away from family and friends, and yet the pay that you're getting, if it's not high enough, it doesn't really help you, because for a 3-day trip, you're away for 50 hours. You see what the truth is? You see what some of the truths are behind our pay? The third point is that the risk profile of the job or career are determining factors as well. And this is really near to me because that's the actual reality of our job. Like, it talks about or it delves into the actual truth, what actually makes up our primary function on the aircraft. I promise you, it is not the cookies, the chips, and the Coke we're serving you, okay? Those are just auxiliary roles. Those are just add-ons, okay? Just to, because either way, no matter what you're doing, customer service needs to be here, okay? So we're gonna do whatever we can to make your ride as comfortable as possible. But the primary function of a flight attendant or a cabin crew member is certainly not the Coke and the drinks and the stuff that we're serving you. I promise you, if that was the case, that would be great. But the reality is that when it comes to this job, we're exposed to harsh conditions, like the radiation from the sun, because we're 30,000 feet in the air, so we're closer to the sun than somebody who is on land. Also, the altitude changes, the pressure changes, all those impact or take a toll on your body. That's why we're not able to work as many hours as a typical 9-to-5 person would do. A typical 9-to-5 person who works a regular job that's full-time will be expected to work 160 hours a month. However, for us, that's not the case. I believe it's like 90 or 95 or something. I can't remember. I mean, you can choose to work more, but the reality is that even working that amount of hours alone is stressful. It's a lot. And mind you, that 90 hours or whatever, it's the flight hours, flight time hours, trip credit hours, not the actual time that you're spending away from your home. So to get to that 90 hours, assuming you're working the 3-day trip that I talked about, which was 17 hours, it's gonna be 17 plus 17 plus 17 until you hit 90. However, remember that trip alone, you're spending 50 hours away from your home. So think about that. The other thing we're there for medical assistance as well. If somebody gets a medical or is having a heart attack, panic attack, dies, faints, passes out, whatever the issue is medically, we're expected to assist that individual. And the difference is that when you're on land, you can call for medical assistance from the ambulance, you can call the police, you can call the fire, like you can call backup. But when we're in the air, all we have to rely on are the emergency equipment or the medical equipment that we have and the assistance from other medical personnel. We need more hands because at the end of the day, that medical episode can be used as a decoy or a distraction. So essentially, in as much as we care about your safety and your health, and we need to make sure that you survive whatever medical episode that you're experiencing, we also have to be mindful of the fact that we also have over 200, 300 other people on this plane that we need to care for. So nobody's taking advantage of this medical episode to do something crazy, okay? I'm laughing, but that's the reality of it. The other thing when it comes to the risk profile of this job is that it's emergencies, y'all. The plane can crash, emergency landings, lightning strikes, and plane hijacks. Unfortunately, as dark as this may sound, that is the reality of this job. And this is the reason why we ask for more pay. Because if you think about it, if that plane drops out of the sky, that's the end. There's no, it's gone. If it blows up, it blows up. If somebody crashes that aircraft, it's gone. Like your life is over within the blink of an eye. However, just like firefighters, we're not showing up to work praying and hoping that these emergencies and medicals would happen. Firefighters are not sitting at their stations praying and hoping that buildings will burn so they can work. No, it doesn't work that way. However, that does not mean that, or that does not negate the fact that that is a real responsibility and a duty that we have, and we have to be ready to perform those responsibilities when it comes to it. So don't say that because we don't experience medical situations or emergencies on a daily basis, so why are we talking about more pay? That's because if it comes to it, the expectation is all the way up here, okay? And it's a life or death situation. That's how risky this job is. Forget how glamorous it might seem. Forget you flying from Seattle to Milan somewhere. We don't even go to Milan from Seattle, but to Europe or Asia somewhere. The whole point is that getting to that destination, so much can happen within that gap, and it can call for a life or death situation, okay? Sorry to go dark, y'all, but I have to say it. Somebody's got to say it, okay? And it's gonna be me. So that's the reality. So when you hear a flight attendant talking about getting paid more, consider these factors that I'm talking about and ask yourself, think about it first before you respond. We're just waitresses in the sky. Trust me, I wish that was all the job required, okay? With this job, when things go wrong when you're in the air, it can go wrong really, really fast. So these are some of the nuances when it comes to this job and how difficult it can get. Know that we're there for a major purpose, safety and security. Lastly, the other thing that makes this job high risk is the possibility of getting stuck in war-torn countries. But you don't go to work expecting to get stuck in a war-torn country. But this is one of the risks that you might experience depending on where you're flying to. Or maybe there might be an outbreak there or something. So you never know. So there's just so much involved so the next time you hear us talk about our pay can be higher, it should be better, just think about these factors for a second. Just consider these things. Now that I've talked about what makes up our actual pay and why flight attendants should be paid a higher hourly pay, let's go ahead and talk about some facts about our flight attendant pay. The first thing is that flight attendant pay is airline specific. As I mentioned earlier, probably, I'm not sure. Although they may vary, they are close enough. And when I say airline specific, the first point is that depending on whether you're working with a major carrier, a small one, or a major one, that can influence your pay. Where the airline operates out of can influence your pay, but it differs. All airlines do not pay the same. So just because I might talk about my pay and say that, well, I get paid, $37.64 an hour for 1 year flight attendant compared to when I started, when it was like 35, 30, it's not 35, but it was like 33 or whatever. So those varying factors, I might get paid that with my airline, but that might not necessarily be with your airline. So then assume that because I work with American and I get paid X, Y, and Z, if you end up working with United, you're gonna be paid X, Y, and Z. Secondly, how high flight attendants get paid is dependent on whether you work with a regional or a mainline or a international airline. Lastly, flight attendant pay is inconsistent from month to month. So if you're looking for a job that has like a set hourly pay, set amount of hours, and you know exactly, you expect to know exactly how much your pay would be every month, this is not the job for you. The pay is inconsistent. That's because trips are different. The trips you might work every month might vary. However, you can potentially set a goal for yourself or a range for yourself like I do. My goal when I first started was that I did not want to earn, in terms of gross pay, anything below $5,000, $5,000. You can set a goal that you don't want to take home. You don't want to earn anything below $6,000 every month, gross pay, not net pay. Or you can set a goal for yourself saying that you do not want to earn anything below $3,000 every 2 weeks, gross pay. If you want to focus on net pay, you can do that as well. But what I found was that sometimes net pay varies because of deductions here and there and taxes. So I focus on gross pay. So as I work like a month or two of earning gross pay of, let's say, $5,000 or $6,000, I kind of have an idea of what my net would be. So when I'm saying I want a gross pay of nothing below $6,000, I have an idea of what my net will be. So if you know that the trips that you have on your line or your schedule is going to set you below that amount, then you can visibly see where you are income-wise during the month and add on more trips just to increase that amount as well. This has been a mouthful. I feel like I've said so much when it comes to the truth behind flight attendant pay, from talking about what makes up our actual flight attendant pay, why we ask for higher pay or why we should be paid a higher hourly pay just to make up for the gaps, and also some of the facts behind flight attendant pay. I will like to add that our primary function, once again, is primarily safety and security related, and I promise you I am not exaggerating. Fortunately, we do not always perform these functions or these safety and emergency functions, and like I said the example with firefighters earlier, no firefighter shows up at their station expecting the building to burn because they want to work or perform their functions. And in the meantime, what do? There are other responsibilities that they do perform, even though their primary function might not be performed on a daily basis. So it's the same with us. Just because we're not primarily dealing with medical situations or having to evacuate aircrafts or dealing with emergency situations does not necessarily mean that we won't do anything else. That's where this providing snacks and food and customer service and just interacting with our clients and customers comes in. Those are additional auxiliary or peripheral roles that we have to play. But the primary role is safety and emergency situation related. That's just what the function is. When you go to flight attendant training, all your training, honestly, I spent 42 days in flight attendant training. 40 days, 40 days, y'all, was about safety and emergency and security related. 2 days, barely 2 days, was about service. Okay, so keep that in mind. Nobody's out here praying that planes should crash or leaks should happen or emergencies should happen so we can get to perform our main function. I beg to differ. I don't want that to happen. And as dark as that may sound, that's what the truth is. I would like to add that most people would argue that we signed up for this career knowing the terms and conditions, blah, 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 whatever. However, as a work group, I believe we're not the first, nor would we be the last to ask for better pay. All I'm saying is pay me for my worth, pay me for my time. That's all, okay? And we are, in my opinion, well within our rights to be asking for higher base pay based on the conditions and expectations of the job. In as much as people can observe the job from the outside, read about it, gather information, and assume that they know all that we go through, you do not. Unless you're in the role and actually performing the function or doing an actual analysis of the role and the expectations as a whole, you cannot confidently say you know everything about what we do and the fact that you think our pay should be A, B, C, D. So let us be, okay? Let us be. Once again, like I said, this is the first part of a series that I will be doing when it comes to flight attendant pay. So please stay tuned and watch out for more videos when it comes to our income. And also check out this video here where I give a total breakdown of flight attendant pay and what the potential earnings can be for you if you're attempting to become a flight attendant. I give a breakdown and I talk about a first year or a new hire flight attendant compared to somebody who's been there 12 years or more. So keep that in mind and watch this video just to get more information with regards to that. Thank you all for watching and I'll see you in my next video. Bye-bye.